Hello everybody, it's me again and welcome to the second video related to web services and JSON. Alright, in this video I created already a project. Okay, so you do the same thing, you can create a project. And in this project there's only a view controller and main storyboard. In the main storyboard there's nothing. In the view controller I've done a few things that you should do too. When you create a new project, you only have two methods: the view did load and then the memory warning, right? Did receive memory warning. So you can do this is all you need. What I've done also, I've created two functions. One function is for loading the record, and one function for parsing out the data. So the loading the record function is just a simple function. There's nothing in it right now, and I just simply call it from the view did load. So you do the same thing, create a function called load records, and it's an empty bracket, and you call it from the view did load. All right. So what do we have in this view load records? The first thing you need to do is that you need to do define a string that contains the address of your web service. So I have this web service that I'm going to test my code against. And basically all it does, it calls, this one will give you a store listing. Remember in the previous videos when we did the maps and then the store listings and then the core data. So I have it stored. We're calling a web service that will give me the data from a server. All right, so you can use the same thing or you can make your own. If you have your own web services that you want to test against, you can do the same thing here. Okay, so the first step that I need to do is that I need to create the session. So I need to first, before we create the session, I need to get the configuration, okay? So you say let config equal NSURL session configuration. You see that? And inside that class, there is actually a default configuration that we will use in our call. So you don't need to do anything special. We'll just simply use the default configuration. The second thing here, we need to create the session. So I'm going to say create let session equal to NSURL session. Now in this session, you have two methods. The first one here, and this one here, and the second one. This one we will use. And if you read the documentation, I'll explain more about these, but I'll explain them quickly. This is the configuration that we created here. The delegate is another class, a helper class that allow you to handle some callbacks from your session. For example, if you wanted to, like if you call a web service and that web service asking you for a username and password, we call that a challenge. Then you, in that class, in this delegate, you can respond to that challenge. The queue, most of the cases we leave it as nil, means that all the delegate calls will be handled sequentially. If you want to make it your own, if you want to do your own thing, you can provide a queue for that. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we'll select this. The configuration is the one that we created, which is config. For the delegate, for now we leave it as nil, and for the queue, again we leave it as nil. Okay. All right, so we're done with this. We've created the configuration. We created the session. The next thing I need to do is that I need to create the URL object. So what you say, because URL is actually optional object, that means it means sometimes the web service is not correct or the address is not correct. Or if you're doing local access to your like objects on your device, a file or an image or whatever, again that the address for this image could be wrong. So this is actually it might return nil. So what do you need to do is say if let URL equal NSURL, so it's a conditional variable, and NSURL equal NSURL, come on, NSURL, okay, and then you provide a string. The string that we wanted to provide is the one that we that I define up there. So I just say here, it's just the URL string. Okay. So if it is valid, that means I got connection. I want to do the following. Okay, everything goes inside the if statement. Okay, so if it is a valid URL, we need to create the request, then we execute the request, and then we do something with the data. All right, so we need to create the request. So I say here, let request equal ns URL request, and then what do I give it? I give it the URL that I've created earlier, which is URL here. So I'll say URL. Okay. Okay. After this, we just simply execute the data. And how do you execute the data? If you remember from the PowerPoint presentation, in this session, there is a call, and we will do it this way. We say let task data equal to session, the one that we created, and there is a call. If remember, do you remember what was the call? It's called data task with request. Now here it's kind of tricky, so you need to pay attention to what we do here. First, you need to give it the request. So the request is the one that we've created, which is this one here. So I'll put request. Okay. The completion handler is kind of tricky here. So I just simply double click on the completion handler. So what I need to do, I need to I need to define a few variables here. First, I need to say, this is my data, all right? And the type of it is NS data. The second thing is my response. So I'm gonna call it response, if you will. I'm just double clicking here, okay, response. And the last one is an error. So I'm gonna do again here, define an error. Okay. What is it saying here? Delete requests. Okay, fix it, delete requests. Okay, so now here, this is the code. Let me explain what's happening here so you are familiar with the process. So this is gonna call that request or execute the request on the server. This is my request that I'm calling. When it comes back, it will call this completion handler. That means the call is done, finished. And what do you receive in this call? You receive three things, possible things. Well, you will receive the data if it is valid, and for now, and then your response, and then the error. What we're focusing on right now is the data and the error. So the data, if you will get a data, it could be a valid data or not, it could be a JSON data or not. The error tells you if there's a problem with the call, all right? But you still have to do something with the data. Later on, I'll show you how we do that. So this is so we're okay. So we need to check if the data that we receive is not nil, that we receive some value. Otherwise, we didn't receive any value, that means we have an error. So I'm gonna check first. We say, this is, remember that execute the request, and then we need to do something with the data that's sent back to us. Okay, so I'll put it back in here so you see it. Okay. So we say, if data is not equal to nil, that means we've got some data back. Else, what? We got some error, all right? So that is the code, just to get the data back. Now, you can do the same thing. You can do this with any URL request. It doesn't have to be only JSON. This is any URL request. Okay, so now we have here, what do we need to do? We need to say, if we got an error, we need to print out that line, the error, print out the error, print line. Let me just put a comment here. We got an error. And print line here, we'll say error getting stores. And we're going to print out the error, which is error dot localized description. Okay, so that will give me the error. All right, how about the data? So we got some data back. Let's say we got some data back. Some data back. Okay. How about the data? What do we need to do? We can just print it for now, just to show you. So say print line, and then we'll just say again, just print it out. Data. Okay. We got an extra bracket. All right. There is one more thing that we have to do. Okay. The last thing I need to do after the completion handler, this is the task, right? This is your task. What happens, this task or this calling this or the calling the data, it gets interrupted. It's not a continuous thing. So what you need to do is that you want to make sure that you resume getting the data when you get interrupted. If you don't do this, you will not get anything. You will get something, you get blanks. So what you need to do is you say task data dot resume. Okay, this will allow you to resume getting the data in case there is interruption to the data. Okay, I think that is it. We're ready to test it. All right, so let's go ahead and test it and see what happens. Compile it, make sure there's no errors. There are no errors. And let's test it. If we run it, I should get, if there's no error, I should get something, okay? All right, you see this? This is NS data. This is your JSON data, but it doesn't know what this is because it comes in as data. We need to convert this data into JSON data, all right? And we will do this in the next video. But let's test it before we continue. Let's see if we can get an error instead of, let's just change this a little bit and change the address a little bit and see what kind of error we get. See if it works. We got data, but this data is not what we want. All right. Okay. Maybe we got data, but it's not the. It's probably that file is not found. Okay. All right. Maybe it didn't call. Let's check something here. But maybe if we can get access to it. Anyway, this will give you the error. All right. If there's an error invoking that web service, it could be there's no Wi-Fi or anything. But my guess here is that we're actually getting that file does not exist or that 404 error. All right. So that is it for this video. I will see you in the next video. In the next video, what we're going to do is that instead of just printing out the data, we parse out the data. We will actually take that data and then we will call this function that will get the result back. All right, I'll see you on the next video.